We've covered how to choose your gravel bike. We've even covered some of the trickier choices, like should you run 1x or 2x. But what about upgrading your bike? In the last of this series with Shimano's GRX group set, we're going to be looking at doing exactly that. Oh, and if you're a traditionalist, you better watch out. You see, I happen to think that riding any bikes off-road is a lot of fun, but I can't help but wonder when I'm riding my gravel bike if I could be having even more fun if the bike was just that little bit more capable. So how do we keep the bike light, fast and agile as it currently is, whilst adding more speed and confidence on the rough stuff? I've got a few ideas, and it starts with the dropper post. If you are a traditionalist, now is the time to look away. There's a lot of crossover from the world of mountain biking to the world of gravel. Take the rear mech on the GRX group set for a start, with its clutched mechanism and capacity to run a mountain bike cassette. That's not what I'm talking about right now though. I'm talking about the dropper post, one of the greatest inventions to come from the world of mountain biking in recent years. It's a simple concept. You press a lever on the handlebar and your seat post can be raised or lowered at the click of a button. And you cannot argue that when your saddle's down and out of the way, you have a little bit more agility around the top of the bike, enabling you to tackle steeper descents with greater ease. Yes, okay, many people will argue that it isn't necessary, and you can probably tackle almost the same sort of terrain with the saddle there, but it just makes everything that little bit more comfortable, giving you that little bit more confidence. Fitting a dropper post to a bike is actually relatively simple. I mean, to make it even easier, you can even have an externally routed cable. Although this one, and on gravel bikes these days, especially with 1x, we've managed to run it internally all the way to the base of the dropper post. And what's even better than that is because of the GRX system, I don't actually need to add an extra lever to my bars because I can just use that shifter to actuate the dropper. So it keeps it all looking really sleek and really smart. You'll probably notice that you won't be able to put any old dropper in your gravel bike, and that's because the seat tube diameter is not the same as in a mountain bike. This Pro Koyak one offers 70mm of drop, and it comes with a 27.2mm clamp. And I think it's actually perfect for a gravel bike because it's not the position of the bike that's limiting what sort of terrain you can ride. It's actually the tyres and the braking that you get from the tyres. But having a dropper with just 70mm drop will enable you to move around on the bike that little bit easier, so you could potentially tackle something steeper. But I think the real advantage comes when you're spending a long day on the bike with a few technical trails. It just offers you a little bit of movement, meaning that you can get the saddle out of the way of your bum and just relieve, and it becomes more comfortable that way. To talk you through really quickly how I did it, I exposed the internals on the GRX lever over here, threaded my inner cable through, and at that point I then put the entire outer cable over the inner cable, inserted them both into the down tube. At this point I pulled the cranks out of the bike, but it turns out I didn't need to do that because this bike has a rubber kind of a bung, a port underneath it, which gives me access to everything underneath there. It then goes up the seat tube, attaches into the dropper post here, which is where it's actuated, clamp the cable to the actuator on the dropper post, and then cut off the rest. Cranks are back on and it's now ready to go, and I'm really pleased with it. It's taken less than 30 minutes, and as I said before, I was really expecting that to be a tough job, but it wasn't. It's all very well being able to move around on your bike with more ease, but if you are riding more aggressively, you'll probably want to consider a wider tyre to increase your margin for error. And if you're getting new tyres, I absolutely recommend setting them up tubelessly. And if you're doing both of those things, you'll need to consider your rim compatibility. You'll need a sealed rim to run a tubeless setup, and you also need to consider the type of hook the interface between the rim and the tyre is suitable for a tubeless setup. The Shimano RX 570 over there has both of those things, and it's also got a slightly wider internal rim width, meaning it'll increase the volume of your tyre. Even if you can't run a really wide tyre on your gravel bike, I still recommend going for a wider rim bed, as this will increase the volume of your tyre. For example, the tyre over there is a 38mm, but because it's on a wider rim bed, it actually measures wider than these 40mm tyres over here, and quite a lot as well. And that's only going to increase your confidence on the descents. Another design feature from the world of mountain biking now, and that's a set of really wide bars. You've probably noticed that if you look at mountain bikes now, the bars look, well, some of them look ridiculous, over 800mm wide. I'm not recommending you put them on a gravel bike because you'll simply be really slow. You won't be aero at all, and you'll really notice that on the fast bits of road. Instead, go for a compromise, something like the Discover Big Flare bar, which has a 30-degree flare from the hoods down to the drops, meaning I'm still relatively aero up here in the hoods for the fast bits, but when I want more control and I want to go down a descent, I've got the big wide grip on the drops and I still have access to my brakes down here. Another feature about this bar is that because of this flare, I'm not going to be hitting my wrists on the top of the bars when the going gets really rough and bumpy. And then because the bar is just that little bit wider, I also have space for an extra pair of brake levers up on the flats as well. If you are running a wider pair of bars, you may want to consider running a shorter stem to keep your effective reach to the hoods exactly the same as it was before. Or another reason to run a shorter stem would be to increase the agility on the steeper, more technical descents. All of that said, if you're doing a longer, less technical event, you may want to keep a slightly longer stem just to increase the stability of your front end. Now, it may sound a little bit dull, but if you're upgrading your gravel bike and you want to make sure it's really up to the job, you should probably consider your gearing. If you have an older gravel bike or cyclocross bike, there's a chance you've got a standard road compact setup with a 34 up front and a 28 or a 30 out back. And that's pretty good for most things, but if you want to tackle some really challenging terrain, you may want to consider lowering your first gear. So going from something like a 34, which we have here, up to something as big as a 40, you know, a mountain bike style cassette. That's relatively inexpensive to do, but only if you've got the right equipment in the first place. Otherwise, you may have to consider replacing your rim mech as well. Or you could go for a super compact front chainring setup. We've got a 31 up there on the GRX group set, although Shimano do say that is only compatible with the GRX front derailleur, and that's all to do with the spacing from the frame. For me, riding a bike should all be about ease of control, and there's no better way to gain more control over your bike for less effort than going for some super tacky bar tape or grips. That means you can put more effort into controlling the bike, actually steering it, and less effort into grabbing hold tight, and more effort into modulating your brakes more effectively. I've used the bar tape that's already underneath here. I've wrapped a new layer over the top, which immediately makes the bike look that little bit fresher, and it also gains a little bit of vibration damping through the double layer of bar tape. Now at this point, you might also notice that my dropper cable is quite long, and that's because I'm not the only person using this bike. Dan and Si also make regular use of it, and if you haven't noticed, their legs are quite a lot longer than mine, meaning the saddle will have to go up, which will pull that cable through and make it look just right when it's at their saddle height. If you are making all of these upgrades to make your bike that little bit faster off-road and riding it more aggressively, there's one final upgrade which I think you should consider, and that's a little bit of protection for your frame. Something on the down tube to protect against debris flying up, and maybe just some see-through tape over the frame to protect your paintwork. Help prevent the carbon from chipping or the aluminium from denting. Let us know what gravel upgrade you've ever made in the comments down below, or let us know which one you think is the best and the most worthwhile. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up, and for more content right now, click just down there.